SHARP AQUOS XLED Mini LED meets its first competition since SHARP has returned to the TV industry in 2023. Its first competitor, the Samsung Qn95c Quantum Dot Mini LED. Up next.
I've seen things people wouldn't believe.
Hey, what's up guys, I'm Brian, this is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for joining me as I compare the SHARP AQUOS XLED Quantum Dot Mini LED to the Samsung Qn95c Quantum Dot Mini LED, which is Samsung's true flagship this year in 4K in their Mini LED lineup. The reason why I want to compare these two, I'm throwing SHARP right in the deep end against one of the best TVs this year, as the SHARP is about to jump into Value Electronics King of TVs shootout in just a few weeks. I want to do a quick comparison in store. Now, before we get started, this is not a perfect comparison. The Qn95c is flush against the wall, right next to a window. I tried to block as much ambient light as I could, and the SHARP XLED is further, or I should say closer to me, so it looks like it's larger. They're both 65 inches. It is in a very bright room, where both these TVs do shine. What is interesting as well is, though they are very similar technologies in terms of being quantum dot mini LEDs, their signatures are very, very different. They do also show up very, very different on camera, which I'll discuss throughout the video. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy the comparison, and thank you so much for watching. Alright guys, here we are looking at the Samsung Qn95c on the left. It is flush against the wall. Then you're looking at the SHARP XLED. They are both 65 inches. The SHARP will appear larger as it is a few inches closer. Samsung is in filmmaker mode versus the SHARP XLED being in movie. A special thank you to Value Electronics, as we are in their Scarsdale location. Please consider making your next AV purchase through them. Let them know that Brian sent you, and they will take great care of you. Now, as I mentioned, it's pretty bright in the room. You're going to see a bit more glare on the SHARP XLED, again, as it is a little bit closer to a spot of glare coming in from the door. The Qn95c, though it's closer to a window, that window is closed and is covered. Again, filmmaker versus movie. Now we're going to move into SDR, filmmaker versus movie. There is a huge difference in signature. Now, the Samsung Qn95c will remain in static in regards to its tone mapping, as there isn't a tone mapping toggle for the SHARP XLED to my knowledge. SHARP makes their own panels and their own SoC, same with Samsung. So matching them up is actually quite difficult. The SHARP XLED is very bright, very clean, very accurate, though even though they are both QLEDs in regards to being mini LED, there is a pink tone only on camera, not in person on the SHARP. And it was there regardless of whatever preset I was in. Now we are in, regardless of what the preset we are in, each color temperature is going to be warm. We're now moving into standard versus standard. Now, as bright as the SHARP XLED is, the Samsung Qn95c has more headroom, meaning it has more flexibility of image. The reason you're seeing me compare these few presets, not all of them, is I couldn't get them to match up enough. And regardless of anything I did other than filmmaker on the Samsung and cinema, it was just so saturated. It looked like it was in vivid in comparison to the XLED, though the XLED is very bright. It has a cooler look to it, and in my first impressions of the SHARP XLED, I compared it to Panasonic. It has that cool, accurate look. Remaining in standard versus standard, it's trying to show you a more punchy, vibrant preset. We will return to filmmaker versus movie shortly. As I mentioned before, the Qn95c has more headroom to be able to make it look however you like. It is still so vibrant and so saturated, even though I'm looking to make it as accurate as possible. Even in this standard preset, dynamic tone mapping is still set to standard. Now this is a quick comparison for me, again trying to sneak it in before the Value Electronics TV shootout. I have not had much time with the SHARP XLED, again, their own SoC, their own settings. We still have a number of questions for the SHARP engineers that we're waiting for responses on. So all I could do was kind of compare them apples to apples as close as I possibly could. They both look amazing for many different reasons. Again, they're both very bright. They both have very good reflection handling, though I'd still give the edge to the Qn95c. Those of you that know that I have looked and considered buying the 85-inch Qn95c, we're going to move in now to its most vivid, both of their most vivid presets, to just show you how bright they can both get. And again, I promise you that pink tone is not there on person or in person on the SHARP XLED. And it wasn't there when filming it on its own, but sometimes filming TVs together, the sensors pick up different things, even though they're both QD mini LEDs. Now in the last preset I'll show you at the end, which is sports, the SHARP XLED can be made to look very saturated. Now what's interesting there is you see the transition for the Qn95c. When it is controlling blooming, it tends to dim a bit. Losing its brightness, but that's pick your poison type of situation. That does not happen on the XLED. As we go into, again, more vivid demo material here. I'm very happy that SHARP is back in the game. I am very interested to see how it competes against the best TVs in the world. Though at the Value Electronics King of TVs shootouts, it'll be going against MLA OLEDs and Quantum.OLED. Same with the Qn95c. This year for Samsung, instead of the Qn95B being the same as the Qn90B other than build or one connect box, the Qn95c is the true flagship. Also does not have a one connect box as we remain here in vivid mode. Why I like to show all different presets is accuracy isn't always the most important thing to me. I think any of you watching want to see each preset, see what it can really do, or all TVs can do other than just their most accurate preset. The reason I'm not going through them all is it was nearly impossible to get them even looking similarly. Again, as SHARP has its own way of doing things that I have not mastered yet. Which do you prefer? Again, the pink tone that you see on the SHARP XLED is not there, but all the other colors do match up. Moving back into standard versus standard, and then we will move into cinema versus movie. Amazing the blooming control on both. There are many zones on both. A few thousand in the SHARP XLED. They're both very clean. I'd say the Samsung Qn95c has a bit more three-dimensionality in certain content. Again, it can get very bright and it can be very saturated. So for me, more flexibility of image on the Qn95c. Perhaps a bit more detail and a more clear image on the SHARP XLED. It all depends on which signature you prefer. What is your preference will always be what's important. but it is amazing how at times they can look exactly the same and then wildly different. Reflection handling again is better on the Samsung, but also consider that the XLED is a bit ahead of it and catching a bit of the glare from the front door, which is also covered. Now, why I like to stay in standard for a good amount of this demo material is it is poppy, it is sharp, and some of the processing is still enabled. Whatever processing is on one is still on the other. Though in standard on the Qn95c, we are still in static. Which do you prefer? Please tell me which one and why. And are you excited that Sharp is back? If you have a memory of Sharp, the Sharp Aquos and the Sharp Elite, please share that with me. And then here they look completely different. For me, I am an LED fan at heart. I do have OLEDs as well. Now moving into our good friend Jennifer Gala's content, we are going to be in cinema versus movie. Now cinema is brighter on the Qn95c than its filmmaker preset. Jennifer Gala does amazing work. She has 2 channels, Jennifer Gala and the HDR Super Channel. Please check the description below for links to both channels, and please consider liking and subscribing and supporting her amazing work. I love the transition that we see here. And in this particular demo, the Sharp is more saturated, has more color in it. Now both are capable of at least 2000 nits. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments. Which do you prefer? Now ultimately I'd like to put the Sharp XLED against a Sony, but all the Sonys that were at Value Electronics are 85 inches, and putting them next to each other didn't make much sense. The Qn95c was there, though they're not a great match for each other because of the difference in signature. To me, the XLED reminds me more of a Sony, but even more of a Panasonic. But I think it would have been a little better to compare the XLED to, say, the 93L. Though the Sharp XLED is its flagship, we also have a Sharp OLED releasing in the next few weeks. But this XLED will be in the shootout, competing against all the other 65-inch series that released this year. Again, we're still in cinema and movie. There are times where there feels like there's more three-dimensionality on the Qn95c, and then there's times where the XLED tends to have a bit more clarity. Now, I apologize that they're not directly lined up. Again, the Qn95c is flush against the wall. The XLED is on its stand. Now, quickly as we get towards the end of the video, in terms of build quality, the XLED is thick, has superior sound, it's very heavy, it's about 85 pounds at 65 inches. The Qn95c is nearly bezel-less, more of a streamlined look, doesn't have great audio. And Samsung has moved towards a more streamlined look where you can almost not tell which brand it is, which I also appreciate. The audio is not good though. Now, even moving into this next demo from our good friend Jennifer Gala, we are going to stay in cinema versus movie, but this is a very saturated demo. Really not demo material, this is her work. And there are times where they look very similar in these particular shots. I also like to add towards the end that it's amazing how they look very different, or at least in your mind when watching them alone. That's for any TV comparison. But I love that the local dimming is so effective on both of these brands. Local dimming on the Sharp is always on high, same with the Samsung, but the Sharp, if it goes below high, it does affect its brightness, not just its local dimming in terms of its blooming control. But I'm very pleased with both. Sharp does have a 55, a 65, and there will be a 75 launching in the next week or so. Here we're also going to be in filmmaker versus comfort mode, different mode for the Sharp. Again, that pink tint is just the camera, that is not there. Though it is a much cooler image. The reason why I wanted to put the Qn95c in filmmaker, there's times where the filmmaker mode looks fantastic on the Qn95c. Moving back into standard versus standard, vibrancy is what I'm looking for here. I do want to continue to jump around. I could leave the demo the entire time in one preset or the other, but I want you to be able to see if you buy one of these TVs, what can they look like? What preference do you have watching? Excuse me. And what do you think is the most popular size now? It seems like 65 has become the sweet spot in terms of large TVs. What do you currently have? Really pushing the local dimming here, we're going to be in Cinema, which is a brighter preset for the Qn95c versus Movie and the SHARP XLED. And while there's a bit more glare on the XLED, remember it is closer to me, but look at the glare or lack of glare on the Qn95c. Really impressive. Also, don't forget to tune in to the Value Electronics TV King of TVs shootout for 2023. I believe it's the 19th year. And food for thought, the Sharp, which was the Pioneer Elite, was the last and only LED to win the shootout versus, I believe at the time, that would have been plasma, not OLED. Every other time it's either been an OLED or a plasma. And there's times here where there's more depth on the Qn95c. And again, the blooming control on both is fantastic. What I like though about the Sharp is it maintains its brightness. As you can see, the Samsung is a bit darker, even in Cinema, though it's a brighter preset. In order to control its blooming, it does dim itself a little bit. At times it's drastic in some content. I noticed it in SDR, but when it's in HDR, not really. And these are all HDR towards the end anyway. Also, give me your predictions for who you think will win the Value Electronics TV shootout. You'll see the Sharp XLED go against the Samsung Qn95c, LG G3 MLA, Samsung S95c. Now the skin tones here again are on the pink side. That's not how they look in person. The U8K from Hisense and the QM8 from TCL. Give me your prediction, who you think wins this year. Also, the A95L Quantum.OLED, which also just released. Me personally, I think that the mini LEDs should have their own division or own category. That's something I'd like to see in the future, because I'd love to see them be more vibrant and maybe not be calibrated so much in a way, if that makes sense. Neither of these panels are calibrated. Lastly, we're going to move into our most saturated mode, which is standard. We're out of the static tone mapping on the Qn95c, and we're now in sports. This is the most saturated preset for the SHARP XLED. And again, I'm getting to know the presets and the settings a bit more. And once the engineers get back to us, I'll be able to make adjustments to be able to match it even more so. But by that time, you'll see the XLED in the shootout comparing against the best TVs in the world. For this last part, again, we're looking to keep the saturation and the vibrancy at its highest. But look how clear they both are. All right, guys, I am Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for joining me today. Again, special thank you to Value Electronics. Special thank you to Jennifer Gala and the HDR Super Channel. Please consider liking and subscribing. What do you think? Who do you prefer? Let me know in the comments. I think they both look stunning. It's a great shot here at the end. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Love you guys. Take care.